Once she was someone's daughter, sister, girlfriend. Now she's living on the streets. Why should you care? Because one day, my friend, it could happen to you.
If you wanna have to leave your home, just mess with a bottle of comb. You gotta make it to the woods if you can. If you can, if you can, you gotta make it to the woods if you can.
In 2024, Doctor Who released an episode called 73 Yards, written by Russell T Davies. Some fans called it the best episode ever. If you're like me though, you were thinking, hang on, I've seen this before. Because if you're like me, you've seen The Curse of Clyde Langer, an episode of spin-off The Sarah Jane Adventures written by Phil Ford in 2011, about a boy who unleashes a curse and is abandoned by everyone he knows. So, did RTD really rip off this episode? And which is better, The Curse of Clyde Langer or 73 Yards? To answer these questions, we're gonna need a two-parter. In today's video, I'll reminisce about The Curse of Clyde Langer. I'll explain how it teaches kids about empathy using a trick borrowed from the ancient Greeks, and what it says about systemic poverty. Then, in part 2, I'll review 73 Yards and tell you which episode I think is stronger. Are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin. For those who haven't seen it, The Curse of Clyde Langer is the story of titular Clyde, a high schooler, friend, and protege of Sarah Jane Smith. The story begins when Clyde and friends visit a museum to investigate a Native American totem pole which they suspect is extraterrestrial. At the entrance to the museum, Clyde runs into Ellie, a girl living on the streets, who asks him for money.
Why did she want money?
Because she's a scrounger.
Why did you give her some?
Because it's probably not her fault.
At the museum, Clyde touches the totem pole and gets a splinter. The next day, anyone who says or reads Clyde's name develops a passionate hatred for him, including his own mother. Soon, Clyde is abandoned by everyone he knows and forced onto the streets. Now, it's up to him and his new friend Ellie to uncover the truth and save the world before the curse stops them forever. To understand why The Curse of Clyde Langer is so good, we need to understand how it works. This episode teaches kids about empathy using a tragic hero narrative. It's a story structure invented by our friends, the ancient Greeks. A tragic hero is someone who, due to some fatal flaw in their character, falls into tragic circumstances. Take Oedipus, a man who believes he can defy the gods and ends up accidentally marrying his mother and murdering his father, which really puts all of my poor life choices into perspective. To write a tragic hero, you need a character so lifelike that they jump off the page. So, who really is Clyde Langer? Throughout his life, Clyde has grown up believing one thing. He isn't good enough.
I'm not good enough.
Clyde's dad left when he was a baby.
You left me. I was just a kid. And you died.
I didn't die.
That's what it was like.
Clyde acted up and was expelled from school. And now he's known by friends and teachers as a troublemaker. Clyde has all this self-doubt which he covers up with jokes and bravado.
Clyde's cool rule number 2. Deny all emotion, especially when involving girls.
At the start of this episode, where Clyde says his name and unlocks the curse, all of his fears come to the surface. Notice it's Clyde's name which causes everyone to hate him. Names are central to our identity. So the trauma Clyde goes through every time his name is spoken actually reflects his fear that once people see who he really is, they won't like him anymore. Tragic stories are instigated by the tragic hero's fatal flaw. In this scene with Sarah Jane, it's Clyde's self-doubt which leads him to say that art is the only thing he'll ever be good at.
Is this what you want to do? I mean, after school?
Yeah, well, drawing's about the only thing I'm any good at, so...
And it's this conversation which sets off the curse. We see all the people in Clyde's life reject him for reasons Clyde has been worried about. Sarah Jane tells him he's not as clever as her son Luke.
All you've ever done is tell him how uncool he was, what a geek he was, what a freak he was. And all the while you're wasting your time with rubbish like this. My son is worth 100 of you.
Deep down, Clyde believes that because he isn't academically bright, nothing else he ever does will be worthwhile. Rani says she would be mad to be friends with him, and Clyde has said elsewhere that Rani is out of his league. His mum even accuses Clyde of lying and deception. We know that Clyde feels guilty about keeping his adventures with Sarah Jane a secret from her. And then, as the final sprinkle on the turd cake, she tells him,
"Life tricked me. Day you were born."
See how the camera frames the other characters standing over Clyde? It's like a visual metaphor of how small he feels. And even if you haven't been through this exact experience, we all have these dark voices in our heads, so you can totally empathise with Clyde as he ends up on the street through no fault of his own. And this sets us up beautifully for the next part of the episode. With Clyde on the streets, it's time for some social commentary. Now we will walk not only in Clyde's shoes, but the shoes of hundreds like him experiencing homelessness. The Curse of Clyde Langer teaches us that to be homeless is to be invisible. The episode starts with what looks like a fourth wall break. Clyde asks the camera, "What were you doing on the day of the storm?" Later, we find out that Clyde is actually speaking to his new friend Ellie, another girl living rough. Before, Ellie was invisible. Now that Clyde is on the streets alongside her, she can be seen. The director pulls a similar trick by hiding Ellie's face from camera when she first meets Clyde outside the museum. When we later catch up with Ellie, she is facing the camera. Clyde tells Ellie he didn't recognise her, and she answers, "That's because no one looks." We see Clyde being forced to become invisible too. It starts with him taking a new name. Then he has to change his whole personality. Clyde can't use humour and charm to beg for money because...
Not like that, it's anti-flogging China down the market. Too cocky. Who ever heard of a homeless person having charisma?
Finally, Clyde burns his comic book for warmth that he's been working so hard on. As Ellie says,
Everything you ever were, everything you ever wanted to be, it just gets worn away till there's nothing there.
this hits really close to home. So many times someone's asked me for money and I've just said no or walked away. This episode makes you confront your apathy by giving every homeless person on screen a name and a backstory so that you can't just ignore them anymore. Like Clyde, these people live in shame, deprived of basic human rights through no fault of their own. But who is stealing the stories of this community? And how will Clyde escape? Now that we understand what it is to be homeless, the episode can explain how homelessness happens. In this scene, we find out why Clyde has been cursed. At the same time, the episode teaches us about systemic inequality. Clyde's friends have finally realised that their hatred of Clyde is alien-induced, but they still can't think about Clyde or say his name because...
That name, just the sound of it, it's agony.
This is how it works in real life. How often do you and your friends talk about homeless people? We see them every day, but the problem of homelessness is painful, and we can't solve it. So we just sweep it under the rug. According to Mr. Smith,
you have been subjected to a psychophonic programming, possibly designed to keep Clyde isolated.
By isolating Clyde, the monster responsible for the curse can get more and more powerful, safe in the knowledge that Sarah Jane and friends won't stop it. As I said in my Dot and Bubble video, people in power create poor underclasses for their own benefit. But first, they need to isolate the poor people so that society doesn't kick up a fuss. Like the monster in this story, this means that the powerful people can earn more money, become even more powerful. My only problem is that it's an alien doing this. I would have loved it if the episode went even further and made the creator of the curse a human, so kids can have an existential crisis about how evil we all are. The episode's solution is for Clyde's name to be spoken aloud, first by Sarah Jane and Rani, then by Clyde himself. It's a beautiful resolution to both the political commentary and Clyde's character arc. As they yell Clyde Langer, Sarah Jane and Rani are acknowledging the problem, and this brings them one step closer to fixing it. When Clyde yells,
My name is Clyde Langer!
He's embracing who he is without shame, and the curse is finally broken. So there you have it. The Sarah Jane Adventures did an episode about homelessness, and it's really damn good. The Curse of Clyde Langer teaches us compassion. If we can empathise with Sontarans and Slitheen, empathising with our own species should be a piece of cake. And empathy, in case you didn't know, is the first step to making a world which even Sarah Jane can be proud of. I hope you enjoyed walking in Clyde Langer's shoes. Catch me next time when we walk in a different pair of shoes entirely, and there'll be someone else walking just behind us. 73 yards behind, to be exact. Thanks for watching Lingua Anomaly. Don't forget that overthinking is a superpower, and there is beauty in the way that you think. Take Oedipus, or take the car now rambling down the highway. Because he isn't academically bright, nothing else. What? What are you talking about? I would have loved it if the episode went even further and made the creator of the curse a human. I would have loved it if the episode went even further and made the creator of a curse the human. What is going on with this line? I can't do it. But this episode makes you confront your apathy by giving you every homeless person. It does not, sorry.